Drew and Ryn Tompkins, thank you so much for joining us on Real Talk with Joe. Guys, I have had the great opportunity to coach these beautiful people. And well, Ryn and Drew, I just want you guys to, we're going to be talking about your story tonight. There's so much that's been growing in your life and changed in the past couple months, really, 6 months now. Crazy. What were the problems? Yeah. What were the problems that you guys were facing in marriage 6 months ago? Things that were really kind of pain points, things that were really frustrations that a lot of couples, a lot of individuals can relate to. Like, what was the problem? What were the pain points?
Do you want to start? I was going to ask the same question. Fine, I'll start. I think that, the first year of marriage, everyone says is always the toughest. And so we're just like everybody else. That was probably our toughest year of marriage,
which we did not expect.
Yeah. So we had dated for 8 years before we got married. So we thought we knew each other pretty well, but then obviously that was a little different when we got married. But so I felt like we knew how to communicate, but we quickly realized we didn't know how to communicate effectively, I think is kind of a good way of putting it. That we like if we were having a heated discussion, some might call it an argument, but a heated discussion, we didn't really have like
we have those?
Yeah, we have those. So
welcome to the world.
So we really didn't know like our end point, if that makes sense. Like a lot of times we would come around and be like, I don't even know what we're arguing about. Like
it was a crazy cycle.
Now we're arguing about whether we should have Lay's chips or like,
which we've never argued about.
We haven't, but you get the whole idea that we just really didn't know how to effectively communicate and get both of our points across and almost compromise at times.
Yeah. I'm going to take a little bit deeper. I think right before we jumped into, seeking out life coaching and transformational coaching, we had a miscarriage October of 2018. And mind you, it was only 6 months ago that we ended up finding, Joe. And for so long, it was like, I didn't know how to communicate what I was feeling or feel valid and validated or like.
Of course, I didn't know how to help in the situation other than.
It's okay, honey. Yeah. So it went from like, we were, discussing which Lay's chips or not really, but I'm saying like lighthearted kind of stuff that was still serious and still like the little mundane moments of marriage to like something that we noticed was rippling throughout all aspects of just how I viewed myself, how I viewed Drew, the stories we were creating about each other. And so I think that was like a pain point that was very like concrete.
Mm-hmm. Well, would you say that the miscarriage amplified the pain point? Like it was there, and now we're in grieving. Now we're in grief.
Yes,
we are in a stage of hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't. It sounds like that may not have been the case before in the 8 years leading up to marriage, but now here we are. We're experiencing loss, very real loss, the loss of a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we'll never meet, never get to know on this side of heaven. What conversations, Drew? Drew, I'd love to hear what conversations were you telling yourselves during that time? And Ryn, obviously, I want to hear yours. What conversations were you really wrestling with inside that did lead to those arguments? Because it starts with ourselves and what we're telling ourselves,
right?
And then it leads to something completely unrelated, more than likely. Generally,
I think the toughest thing for me, and I think the reason we didn't feel connected during that is because I didn't know she was pregnant. Like she hadn't told me. It was still really early, but just not knowing. So I had to deal with that. Like when she approached me and said like I had a miscarriage, I'm like, just kind of blown away. Like, like wait, we were pregnant. Like we were like just a total surprise, really.
Ooh.
And so that it was tough for me to grasp that and also be there. And I think that I tried to play like a tough guy role and be the supporter in that time. And it's okay. Like, are you okay? Do we need to go to the doctor? Let's think about the protocols. And that's not really who I needed to be. And that's
what made you like tell yourself that? Like, what was it that you like? What made it that you actually did have to be that person at that time?
I think just me telling myself like, okay, you need to be like she's breaking down, like she's like, you know, obviously,
oh gosh, yes,
like she's struggling, so I need to be like the foundation of our relationship right now, and that's I think I was too much of a rock. I may have, you know,
it's like closed off.
Yeah, closed off and kind of pushed to the side, and that was not where I needed to be. I needed to, you know, sit in it with her and really, you know, ask her questions and try to feel what she was feeling. But I jumped into being that rock.
Yeah. And for you, man, I mean, like that rock part, what was it? I mean, here's the story that I can, you know, make up in hearing that is that there's clearly hurt that you were experiencing. And to cover that hurt, it was being masked in this hero for Ryn. Good intentions, right? Like trying to be somebody that she may not have been able to be for herself. No bad. But yeah, is that true? Is that accurate? You know?
Absolutely. Just trying to, you know, be that, you know, strong, manly man for her, and that's not who she needed at that time. At least
now I need it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, because honestly, Ryn, whenever you experience, like, how did you experience Drew's hard, like, hero that he was putting off? Like, how did you actually experience that? What was your? Did you like it? Did it feel right? Were you confused? Were you? Yeah. What was going on from your end?
I feel like I was having a hard time processing it, and then I knew that he was trying to be strong, but we had multiple conversations, and you're like, I'm just trying to be strong, or, you know, kind of like, it's going to be okay, but not like going deeper. And so I would say it felt like brushed off, or just very, like, I could tell he didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to respond. We didn't know how to communicate. And so it kind of always felt like we weren't on the same page.
I think she kind of hinted at something that Joe definitely helped me work through, and not even knowing that I needed to work through it, but that I found out that whenever I'm in waters that I haven't been in my life, then I tend to clam up and shut down and like, okay, I'm gonna process this on my own. And when I do that, you know, Ryn can obviously tell by my body language that something's going on. The hamster's turning up there.
Yeah, I can see. I literally.
And she wants me to verbalize, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I literally, probably the number one phrase of our marriage is, "What are you thinking?"
Yeah, I get that question just about it.
I'm like looking at him like, "What are you thinking?" He's like, "Nothing." I'm like, "There is not nothing in your brain right now."
Because Drew, what's happening? Like, what are you like? What makes it so risky to actually share what you're thinking?
It's just being vulnerable and being like bold and willing to admit like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I don't know if like I need you to validate these or, you know, play devil's advocate and shut them down. This is just what's going on in my brain. Let's talk it out. But so much of that, like we figured out, was when I get in uncharted territory, I just shut down. And that's now that we've worked with you and kind of like, now it's like, okay, I'm going to be bold and say this. It could be completely off the realm, but I'm just going to tell you this. And here we go.
It's been going great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're showing up to the conversation with authenticity, like an authentic man who doesn't have it all together, which sounds like human, but we all mask it that it's not human, right? That's what I know happens for me, and I know happens for all of us to some extent. Is we can't possibly be weak.
No, can't do that.
Because because if we do, then we might, something bad might happen, or our spouse may not love us, or they may not respect us, or they may not care for us, or I may not be able to care for them. Like, and so, I mean, Ryn, whenever you saw Drew actually shift in that boldness, what changed? What did that look like? How did that? What did that change look like for you? What was he saying that he wasn't saying before? What was he doing that he wasn't doing before? How did you experience that?
Okay, so I would say that experiencing losing Holly, which we named the baby Holly. We didn't know if it was a boy or girl, but I kind of feel like it was a girl. So we'll just go with We'll go with that. Or it could have been Hal for a boy. Anyways.
We've never talked about that. So
I
sorry.
just made that up right now. I'm just kidding. So I ended up writing a lot of stories kind of about, what I had experienced. And then since we hadn't gone through the exciting part together, and then, it was just kind of like thrown into grieving process, I definitely started thinking and writing stories about my body and like the ability that I have. And what did we call it? It was like, I very much felt like I didn't have body image issues, but I felt like I had body ability issues. Mm-hmm. And I have Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, so an autoimmune disorder, and PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so my doctors were telling me all these things. And so I was just telling myself all these stories. And as I was like communicating with Drew.
Meanwhile, these are all uncharted waters that I was talking about. So I'm claiming more and more.
Here's Drew.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally just like, and then it goes down into sand.
Yeah.
So as I'm like literally just unloading, I guess, which I could have had a different approach to, but just like grieving out loud and going through all these different things. And he was clamming. It very much felt like I was alone. And even if I felt like, because you were coming back and being like, God's got a plan. And he was being like supportive and reminding me like, the cliche, just like, but not, it didn't feel very like authentic, or that he was showing up, or that he was like intentionally understanding. Really, you said it earlier, sitting with me.
Yep. Kind
of. But then as he's like, just like intentionally chosen to be bold, he started to be able to like call me out when I was writing stories that weren't 100% accurate, or being like, yeah, well, just because, you read this article that says this and this doesn't mean, and just the conversation didn't just stop at like, oh, it's going to be okay. It was, so he was bold and just showed up differently to our conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the fact that he's actually sitting in it is a completely different action than what he was before. And friends, if you guys are listening to this, I mean, we can all probably relate to this, even if you're not married. People that you share, your heart with, and they clam up, or they close off, or they shut off, or they avoid, and they flee, whatever, right? I mean, this is something that we can all experience. And, friends, if you're listening to this and you have questions, feel free to ask. Drew and Ryn would love to share more. So if you have any questions about any of this stuff, ask away. We invite this conversation the same way that they are so graciously sharing this conversation that started with their marriage and each other, really, and themselves, frankly, right? Like you both, this wasn't an overnight success. This wasn't just like, Drew's clamming up, and then all of a sudden he wakes up one morning, look, problem solved. Look, he's like, up for sainthood all of a sudden. It's like, this is a man that's working on it, which kind of brings me to that question of, what's it been like having to fight through the clamming up, even the anxiety, Ryn, for you, the anxiety, the anxiousness that you have, understandably based off of reality, recent reality, your body, your health, the judgments and beliefs that you cast on yourself, like even towards Drew. Like, what have setbacks looked like in this growth, in this season of growing the new muscles of boldness, of freedom, and seeing anxiety maybe even as a gift to shift? Like, what does that look like?
I've just seen in times where I've been more bold recently that it's either gotten me into trouble and
what's that even mean?
Well, like, so we've all been down the path where you start saying something and you're like, I need those words back. Like, I'm starting to sound like an idiot. Can I just reel myself in?
Yeah.
So it's like, I was just bold then, but now I sound like an idiot. But then I quickly realized, like, you're just a human. Like, everyone does it. Like, it always happens. And then the other kind of fork in the road is I was bold and, maybe said something that I would normally just keep inside of me. And then it's like, well, that went really, really well that I said that, and that led us to this conversation. And we just had like a good quality conversation, whereas that would have never happened if I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the two the two avenues that
you've experienced.
Yeah.
And I was thinking on the lines of anxiety, because I wasn't a very, like, I wouldn't classify myself as an anxious person prior to just all the baby stuff. There was two things I got anxious about. Ooh, this would be a fun game to play with Drew. Which two? What do you think it is?
Ooh, the two anxious things?
Think about it.
Probably your first blog post. Is that one?
Okay, 3. Oh.
Got one.
Okay, I was gonna say spiders.
Oh, that's good.
I don't know why, but that anxiety up.
Yeah.
And then also flat tires.
Oh yeah.
Those were like the two things.
Whenever we go on a road trip and like the pavement changes, one of us likes to sleep while I'm driving.
Point fingers.
I'm pointing fingers. And so like the pavement will change, and it's one of those, she'll wake up and be like, we have a flat tire. I'm like, no, we don't. The pavement just changed. Calm down.
I just had a car one time that got literally a flat tire, like every time
mile.
I drove. It literally did. So I just have like weird flashbacks of tire blowouts and stuff. But okay, so, and then I've just experienced like a whole nother, just like real deep, like just seed of anxiety about so many things that I never did before. About just like every time I had so many nightmares when I first got pregnant that were so vivid. And just, I mean, I was like, I don't want to sleep, you know? And yeah, but, and then leading up to the appointments and different things. And with talking to you, Joe, I realized, because you asked me this, like, what does, you know, what if anxiety was good? Like, what could come from it? And I realized that I was being called to write on my blog about just like our experience the first time, and then kind of just how it's been confirmed and confirmed again. And then I blogged again about our rainbow baby and just like our experience with this and how we saw God's faithfulness through it all, and continue to do so. And so I realized that the anxiety of posting the blog post and the anxiety of going to the appointments, it's like, so that other people who are anxious too aren't alone, which I think I experienced so much aloneness the first time. And it was like, I put myself there. I know that because I didn't share about it for so long. And I know, and it was because it was anxiety then too. I just don't think I labeled it as that. But yeah, so the anxiety portion of it and what can come from it is just the growth and the ability to help other people who could be in a similar situation or who are experiencing some sort of, you know, loss. And also in sharing that, I'm able to share about God's faithfulness to us and kind of try and just acknowledge God's faithfulness and encourage other people too, because God's faithfulness is everywhere around us. But so often we're just stuck in a kind of like tunnel of doom. I don't know, but that's what it felt like.
Yeah. Well, that's what it feels like whenever you're alone.
Yes.
Like,
so yeah, that was what I was gonna, I think I included it all. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
well, it's so, and that's the beauty of that boldness and using what we have where we are to be a gift to the world, right? And it starts with your gift to each other. Like, that's the beauty. The world's getting to experience what's happening between the two of you. Really, you know, like the conversations between the two of you are not, even on your blog, are a reflection of what work you guys are doing with each other, with God, you know, in our calls. And then you now get to share that with the people that you have no rhyme or reason to meet, you know, talk to, right? And it starts with, are we willing to surrender that inadequacy that we all feel, that vulnerability that we all feel? And people are, you know, loving on you guys really well. So proud of you, Ryn and Drew. Couple goals for all your couple. Like this, people are loving on you guys. Like, it's people are noticing it, you know, and you know, friends, this is what it means to be authentic in our marriage and in life, you know. So if you're not married, who cares? Like, this is what we're called up to. This is the gift that we get to be. Should we be willing to actually be clear on who we want to become, right? Like, as you guys kind of like process, you know, these past couple months together as you guys are preparing. What are you guys currently, working towards and growing in to continue with that momentum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of being bold, using that gift of even the anxiety from the past to propel you forward in a way that brings blessing, brings hope. What are you guys continuing and working towards? What's next? Like, what are you really striving in right now, today?
Right now, we're just almost in kind of like preparation for becoming parents. Because come December, maybe even late November.
He keeps saying late November.
Yeah, Thanksgiving Day. I'm calling it.
There we go.
So,
keep baking.
We just know that life is gonna change. Like there's gonna be 3 of us, and we just want to make sure that we keep putting each other first. And we can say that to each other, but what's that gonna look like? What's the action steps that we're gonna take with each other to ensure that? And how are we gonna kind of throw a flag up and say we're not putting each other first? We've got to maintain that. So we're almost in, we're obviously in preparing for baby, like physically, as far as like, okay, get the nursery together, get all the things that we need. But there's also like, okay, how are we going to make sure that we're still married? Like we're still that married couple, because I think that part, like having a child's almost twofold, like being very, like being obviously good parents, but also showing your child what a good quality marriage is, and the characteristics of that. So if we're both pouring into the child, which we ultimately we will, but we also need to be pouring into each other to show like this is what a good marriage looks like.
Yeah. And I would say for me, I'm working on surrendering. I feel like that's been a recurring theme of just surrendering my anxiety, surrendering my desire for things to go a certain way, like the birth plan to look a certain way, for just, I don't even know, just surrendering everything that comes to mind that I want to control.
And yet, do you feel like that surrender, do you feel like it pulls away from the planning, like at all? Like, or do you feel like it complements?
I feel like it complements.
Yeah.
And I know, like, with talking with you, it's this weird, because there's non-negotiables of things that I don't think I think it's godly not to surrender, like my vision for my desire for what our family structure would look like and how it would mimic, a Christ-like life and that kind of thing. Like, clearly I'm not trying to surrender that, but just more of, I guess it would be surrendering the anxiety around things that I can't control, and just know that he is faithful. He has shown up so many times and ways undeniably, and to think about that more than the worldly anxieties.
I think I have a good, like right now, or as of recent, she's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to go through the process of giving birth? Like, which,
you and I both really don't have much opinion on that. Yeah.
I just like, how do so many women do this?
Yeah.
How did my mom do this so many times?
Right.
So, like, it's one of those, like, no doubt she should, be thinking about this. Like, I would be too, but it's one of those, like, just, it's going to happen. Like, the Lord's going to give you strength to get through it.
That's what they'll say. You just want that baby out of you. And I'm like, okay.
Go for it.
Joe's like, we weren't expecting to go here.
Talk, guys. This is what you got. Hey, this is real life right here. This is what I'm not for. So I'm cool with it as long as you are.
Looking at Joe, I'm like, why did we think this was a good idea?
Well, it's a good idea because, frankly, it goes back to what you guys have been committed to from day one.
Yeah.
The courage to share what people are craving for, which is authenticity and boldness, and the surrender that brings beauty in this crazy world. Right. And it starts with our crazy lives at home. Like, are we willing to be honest with ourselves? Right. If I believe that I'm not able to take care of somebody that I love, then I'm not going to show up I'm going to show that in my way of being, right. With each other. Like, Ryn, you're not going to share with Drew because obviously he won't meet your needs in the way that you're longing for, and you're not going to open up because you aren't believing that God's given you to be the gift that you are, right? And so, no bad. This is real life. This is why these conversations are happening, because it's my prayer that people will see you guys and go, then look at themselves and be honest enough to say, I'm not alone. The same way that you guys kind of realize that together, I'm not alone. And then when you took it to the next level of opening up on your blog, and oh wow, I'm not alone.
Yeah, really not alone. Thousands of people, reached out, and I was like, wow. And there was a lot of healing that came from that. Like, I had no idea. It was just when I pushed publish on sharing about the first snow, it would have been our first snow day. And it was just such a real moment that I, was such a random, unexpected thing. And then, yeah, just the amount of people that they weren't even in situations where they lost a child or, but they were able to be like, wow, like this really helped me just with where I'm at, and like hearing them come and tell their stories and just having the they were vulnerable with me and knowing, and then also just being able to pray, over them together, and it just really like I also found purpose in it. I don't know why, because before it was just like, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Yeah. And I could have chosen to stay like, why did this happen? But Hale is the first part of Hallelujah, which means a joyful praise, and then to you. So it's like Hale, a joyful praise, and then you, what? Hallelujah. I can't say it, so I can read it, but and then to you. And so I was like choosing to be in a state of joyful praising. And yeah, I don't know. So just being able to talk about that and communicate, and yeah, it was really healing.
What would you guys say to an individual who's wrestling with infertility, wrestling through maybe a miscarriage? Like what, I would love both of you guys to share, like Drew as the guy who is growing in that being willingness to be vulnerable and honest, with his spouse. Ryn, as you have shared, like what advice, what would you tell them? What would you, if you had the chance to look them in the face, what would you say to that person?
Just to have faith and to reach out to the Lord and just pray. I mean, it's another long story, but there's been several times where I wasn't bold and didn't ask the Lord for exactly what I wanted. And then when I finally got up, almost the courage to do that and ask exactly like, Lord, here's exactly what I want. Make it happen, or don't make it happen because you're protecting me. And then like literally 2 months later, it happened. It's like, well, why didn't I do that 6 months ago? Like, thank you.
Yeah.
And so it's just reach to him and be bold and literally, ask for exactly what you want, whether it be if you just experienced a loss, like, Lord, we really need like some healing. We need a victory, basically. Like we need something. And if it's infertility, like don't be afraid to like, Lord, we want a son or a daughter. That's what we're craving. And if it's not one that we biologically can have, then Lord, just put a baby in our path that, like, if adoption's an option, put it in our path and make it yours.
Okay, so kind of piggybacking off of that. I would say something I didn't realize I was doing, but as I read back through my journals, and even as I've had quite a few people message me, and something that I am constantly saying to them is, and this goes with praying boldly, but my prayer through so much of this is like, God, reveal yourself to me today, which has been so cool because it's like I ask him to, and then I don't feel it, or I don't necessarily see it in the day-to-day. But as I sit down and I read what I've been writing or something, I'm like, oh my gosh, or like just people who come into my life, I'm like, like he did. He revealed himself, and he is in the details. So my definitely would say pray for him to reveal himself to you in an undeniable way. And then the second part of that is to be open to acknowledging his presence and his faithfulness. Yeah, very much so, because if you ask, like, he will show up, and it's through the craziest. There's zero way I could be making this up right now. I'm like, Drew, do you see that? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's honestly, what you guys are doing is you guys are inviting relationship into the conversation with that prayer. You're inviting, in this case, God, right? As you're also bringing other people into this processing, right? Because that ultimately, I mean, that's what like brought you guys into the space where you guys are at right now. That processing together as a team, as a unit, to grow in that boldness where now Drew's picking up a baton that he maybe had, didn't want before. It was too hot, too cold.
He's twirling it with some fire on the end of it.
Right. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. It's awesome.
Fire. We're just twirling.
He's like going between his legs.
Right. Probably trotters, But like, this is, and that's where the gift of this is really kind of coming around full circle, right? Like, for you guys to be in a place where you're inviting the conversation to take place with God in the first place, not being silent, right? And friends, if you're listening to this, right, invite the relationships into your life. I know Ryn and Drew would be happy to connect with you. I know that they would be so grateful just to hear your story and share that presence and just being with you in the conversation, like Drew has shifted in just being in it, not having the answers, not being okay.
Yes,
sitting in the conversation and actually just listening. Maybe even listening in the silence, like with each other, somebody that you love, right? And we can all agree that there's a lot of grief happening around us. It's not all miscarriages, and yet there is some hurt in our nation, in our world. And what Drew and Ryn are talking about here, their story is one avenue that is also a microcosm of the macro reality for the people around us. And so that's why I wanted them to share their hearts, their story, because they're shifting now, so that whenever this little beautiful baby boy comes into play, and comes here, they are able to show up with that gift of vulnerability, of boldness, and letting the child, this one kind of be blessed and be a blessing to the world around them in the imperfections, not without imperfections. That's not this side of heaven, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Ryn, Drew, is there anything else that you guys want to share as we kind of wrap up to folks that are just sitting in this conversation? Any piece of advice, anything else that you guys want to share?
Just kind of like listening to you right then, and just kind of made me think of something that I've heard, and I think that it's just can apply to pretty much everything. Like, you're either heading into a storm that you don't know and that you almost need to prepare for. You may be sitting in a storm that, we talked about loss and this world is crazy at the moment. Or you're just coming out of a storm like Ryn was when she made that first blog post and she felt alone. So in those three ways, or those three scenarios, are kind of how I look at my life currently. And not that this beautiful baby boy is going to be a storm, but it's, it's different. It's going to be it's going to be a test, for our marriage, and it's going to be a blessing at the same time. Yeah. So we want to prepare for that. We know that that's going to put strain on us. There's going to be a lack of sleep, and this boy gets grumpy when there's a lack of
gravy.
sleep. So
I'm like, I take a nap.
So it's we just want to prepare for that, and so we know that we're heading into that storm. But there's definitely been times where we've been coming out of storms, and so.
That was good.
Thanks.
Add to that, Ryn.
I don't know. Sometimes I just want to look at Drew and be like, "You're so cute. I love you." That's what I would say.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just to be like, it's so easy to be caught up in everything, and it's even within what we're walking through, what we're talking about, just to, I don't know, just look at each other. I don't know. That sounds weird. We're doing so much like through virtual stuff, and he's like one of the only faces I see. So, and just the amount of time that we end up talking, but we don't look at each other, like, connect. So I have no idea how I got there, but that's what I would say. Just so like, spend time looking at each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually,
wise words from Ryn. Put that in the book.
Hey. You're talking about doing something that does require, some level of intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
Actually look at the person that we say that we love, and look them in the eye so that we can actually see their heart and see what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Are we willing to sacrifice our busyness, all the responsibility, all the things that we have going on for the sake of connecting, being with the person that we claim to love and care for so much?
And that's something that what's the weekend called? Vision Weekend.
Yeah.
So one weekend a year, really. I mean,
it's a big vision.
It's not even really a weekend. It's like a Saturday mainly. And we just block off our calendar. It's usually right at the start of the year, and we just spend time with each other. I have to do some sort of task around the house because I can't just sit. Like, we're going to do it as a team, but we got to do something.
Right.
We take a task to
do the board here.
We do like budget together. I mean, we do all the grown-up things that weekend, and it just starting the year off on that same page of like we establish goals. So Ryn knows my goals, I know her goals, and we can call each other out. We've done that I think 3 years now, and that's just been something that
it was really good that we
drastically changed.
We accidentally came across it one week, and we were like, wait, what are we doing? Like, what do we want for retirement? What do we? And for sure.
But,
and piggybacking off of Vision Weekend, it's like we intentionally, so we started to make these goals and visions for our marriage, and then we're like, okay, I don't think we're getting there alone. And so, we got a financial advisor. We got you, Joe, which has been so amazing because we realized just, that we needed a third party.
It really started, we kind of hit the root cause of we're not communicating well.
Yeah.
Let's get Joe to kind of come in and see, like,
and it's like, we don't have the expertise on finances of like, we don't know all the logistics and the how-tos and different things of like, okay, if we want generational wealth, what does that look like? What can we be doing now? And even with working with you, it's like, we're setting short-term visions of what do we want this season to look like? Which I think I've always been good about long-term seasons, but in terms of, or long-term visions, but in terms of like short-term, I'm like, I don't know. I just want to wake up, I guess, or, what I'm saying? So
another day.
Yeah. So it's been really helpful. So I guess the last thing we would say is like, look at each other and, what's your vision? What's my vision? And then what's God's vision for us? And then how do we both strive for, and abide in that vision that he's put us on or have for us. So
yeah,
it's been good.
It's amazing, guys. You guys have done a phenomenal job of whenever we get authentic, whenever we get real, whenever we actually lower our shields, right? New resources, possibilities, creativity come about. New meaning in the relationship is possible until we get there. Before that, we're stuck in this crazy cycle.
Right.
We then we just justify it and call it life. Like, oh, this is how she always is. This is how I always am. This is just what it is. Like, well, if something else were possible, would you want to know? You guys have done that. Friends, listen to them. They've seen it. They're doing it. They're investing well and hard into it. And it's such a blessing to be part of it from my end, because I only see it such a small slither, but the slither that I do see is so drastic and so much fun. Of the blessing of parents that you guys will be, I have no doubt that this little one is going to look up to both of you and see, years down the road how much favor God had in their life and bringing you guys into, their lives, because yeah, you guys are doing the work. I'm so proud of you. Friends, if you relate to this story, check out Ryn's blog. You can check it out. The link is right here. Please listen to her words. The words that she shares are poetic.
I always don't want to share.
But I tell you what,
Share words.
If you see any grammar that's wrong, just shoot me a text.
No. But hey, this is honestly, guys, I unapologetically want you to support small business. Here it is. Wedding photographer for all sorts of occasions. Ryn is your gal and can be a great resource to you in meeting your needs. And honestly, the blog is truly, you'll see who you're getting, who you're hiring in her words. So look at them, listen to them, adhere to them, because I promise you, you will not be disappointed in who you hire. And so, guys, thank you so much for this conversation. Friends, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Like I said, if you want to connect with Ryn or Drew in the future, please do. That's been the heart of these conversations from day one, is me connecting people that I love to people that I also love who may not know each other.
Yeah.
So, like I said, guys, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Drew and Ryn, love you both. So grateful for you. And we'll connect soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joe, for having us.
See you guys.